Good afternoon, everyone. So I am going to talk about I do the same everywhere. So this, my favorite, was born out of a tweet that I got from Catherine about 2 weeks ago when I was on a mission trip in Rwanda. And she just wanted to chat with me about it, and I was like, maybe this room full of teachers would like to hear about my trip to Rwanda as well. And so that's kind of where this was born. So about 3 years ago, a little over 3 years ago, I started sponsoring a child. His name is Shema Eric, and he lives in Bugesera, Rwanda. So that was his picture when I started sponsoring him, and this is his picture on this last trip that I just went on. About 6 months after that, I went on my first trip to go visit him. And I got to go and see aspects of all sorts of things that have to do with African New Life. And that's the organization that I sponsor him through. So they have child sponsorship. They have schools in 3 different communities and a church in each one of those communities. And they also provide food for the families. So that was my first trip. And what happened 3 months later was I got back on a plane to travel 24 hours back to Rwanda. And so this trip was a 2-week trip. The first trip was a week over spring break. The second trip was 2 weeks, the day after school ended. So I got on a plane and went back to Rwanda, but this time I was going to work specifically with teachers and students in 3 African New Life schools. So I got to do that in June of 2014. Last year I couldn't go, which broke my heart, but backtrack. After I got home from this trip, I just was like, okay, I want to move here. I want to go and just like, after conversations I had had while I was on this trip, I was like, okay, this is my future. This is what I want to do. And so this year, fast forward, to this year, I got to go back. And this year, our trip was a little bit different. We spent a week in the Kigali schools, which is the capital city of Rwanda, and they're sponsored children in Kigali, and but it just doesn't make sense for African New Life to start a school there because there's children all over the city. So they just use the schools that are already there. But what they haven't ever done is gone into those schools to see how those sponsored children's education is actually going. So that was partly what we were doing this time, was we wanted to go into those partner schools to see exactly like how their education is going and how it's growing. And then the second week we went back to the African New Life schools where we have lots of relationships with those teachers, and so we got to spend time with people that I call friends. And then on those trips, we facilitated and helped run a couple of sessions for a teacher conference, similar to this. There were 170 teachers this year, which was about double than what we had last 2 years ago when I was on my trip. And so we got to help them run that. And so while I was there, I tweeted this out, and my group, so there were 9 of us on our trip, and my group was in charge of the modern teaching session. And the Rwandan leadership came up with that title, and we were just like told to go. And so the way we used that was we used a lot of group strategies for them. And one of the ones that I suggested we use was I Notice, I Wonder. And because of this community right here, I even know about I Notice, I Wonder. And so it was really exciting for me to get to share that with people who really only have a blackboard and chalk and don't have computers and don't have all of this technology, and they just don't have anything. And so I really had to think through, like, okay, what strategy that I use in my classroom will be most effective for people who don't have anything. Literally all I have is chalk. And so I Notice, I Wonder if something they could totally use. They can write a quote on the board. They can put a problem on the board that's not finished. They can do all sorts of things. And like cross-curricularly, they just really ask good questions, and we're really excited about that my idea is different than someone else's idea, and they just had never thought of things that way before. So it's really exciting to get to run that and hear the same conversations in the Rwandan teachers as the questions that I heard when I was sitting in Max's session at TMC 13. Really, really, really cool. So here are some pictures. This is in Kayonza. This is the top school in Rwanda, and it's one of the African Life schools. The top picture is from my very first trip, and this is the new secondary school that they've been building. And the bottom picture is from this last trip, 2 years later, and it's all finished, and they're actually in there and using it, and they have a computer lab with 7 computers. So this is the most well-off school. They're doing very well. And that's my team that went this past year in front of the school. This is Sarah, and this is where my sponsor child now goes to school. And Kajeyo, this community is primarily Tanzanian refugees, so it's on the east side of the country, very poor, really don't have anything. But that's what a classroom would look like in Rwanda. They have a desk that has a seat attached to it, and there's usually 3 or 4 students crammed onto that desk, with usually 50 to 60 students in a classroom at a time. These are some of the Kajeyo teachers from my first teacher trip. This is the first teacher conference, and then the second teacher conference, and then this is from this trip with the Kigali schools. The kids are absolutely precious. So, we're exactly the same. We all love teaching. We all love our students. We all love learning. We love improving. And we all love doing our very best. So they do that, and we do that. It's really, really cool. But they also have some challenges that I've mentioned. They are new to speaking English. Most of them come from Uganda or Rwanda or Tanzania. They did not speak English when they were born. They spoke something else. And now, as of 5 to 10 years ago, the government decided that they were going to change from French as the national language to English being the national language, which means that in a year, they had to go from teaching in French to immediately teaching in English. And that was because of the genocide, the reasons behind that. But it was very, very challenging for schools to staff their schools with Rwandans. They had to bring in Ugandans for that. 50 plus children in class every day. All they have is chalk and a chalkboard. And also, not only changing from French to English, but the government decided in January, at the beginning of the school year, that the whole country as a whole was changing from teacher-centered learning to student-centered learning. And it's a huge change. The thing is that we are still trying to do here in the US over many, many years. And they flipped a switch. We're all doing this right away. So there's a lot of challenges that they have. But these might sound familiar to you. That there's not enough supplies, there's standards that are changing, and my class sizes are too large. Anybody heard these things before? So the reason that this is my favorite, I have gained a ton of things from being in this community. And now I'm able to go and pour into people outside of not only my school, but or my district, but I've gone to the other side of the world and shared things that I've learned in this community. It's really fun. Probably the most favorite thing is that this isn't one-way sharing. This isn't me going in as like all-knowing American. It is a two-way street. Like things that I learned in their classroom, I'm going to take home and I'm going to use them in my classroom because they manage 50 kids. Like, you can't even imagine doing that. Some of the 60 kids, it's crazy things that they're doing in like kindergarten classrooms with 60 kids. Can you imagine? It just is really cool, the things that we learn both directions. And so I mentioned this earlier, this has affected my life so much that I want to move to Rwanda. So kind of where I'm going next is probably next summer I'll be staying for the entire summer to help the staff get their Rwandan students that have just graduated into college here in the US. And so that's kind of the next step. I don't know what that's going to look like really, but a lot of this last trip was researching what I'm going to do in the future with this organization. So if you would like to learn more or just want to have a conversation with me, you can tweet me, come find me. I would love to chat with you. I can talk your ear off, so just, you've been warned. Or on my blog, there's a Rwanda tab that you can go and read all of our blogs. I've blogged through every trip, so you can go way back 2 years and read that. The trip is usually 2 weeks in mid to late June, I can read, mid to late June, and we really, what they asked us was like, we need some chemistry teachers and some men. You guys saw the picture of my team, it was all women. So they would really love to have some men. So if this interests you, or if you know someone at your work that would be interested in this, have them send me an email or something. So that is my favorite.